an attack upon our nation and a crime against all of humanity.
President Trump addressing the deadly mass shootings today, and two senators say he appears ready to work on expanding background checks. Sinclair investigative correspondent James Rosen continues our team coverage from the White House with more.
Hate has no place in America.
Responding to the mass shootings in El Paso and Dayton, President Trump condemned racism and white supremacy and committed U.S. law enforcement to curbing the threats they pose.
We have asked the FBI to identify all further resources they need to investigate and disrupt hate crimes and domestic terrorism, whatever they need.
In earlier tweets, the president had called for bipartisan action to strengthen gun background checks, then proposed marrying such measures to new immigration laws.
That's a joke. That's an absolute freaking joke, that he's going to tie this to the most polarizing issue happening in the United States today around immigration reform.
The president also offered one proposal that could draw opposition from champions of Second Amendment rights.
We must make sure that those judged to pose a grave risk to public safety do not have access to firearms, and that if they do, those firearms can be taken through rapid due process.
The National Rifle Association did not immediately respond to a request for comment on that proposal. Here at the White House, officials must determine how best to follow up on the president's statement using executive authority or working through the Congress. And they will reach these decisions not only in an election year, but in an environment in which many Democrats and some in the media are seeking to pin some measure of blame for the attacks on the president himself. At the White House, James Rosen.
President Trump was supposed to be in Western PA this week, but he's canceling the stop because of the shootings. He was supposed to be touring a petrochemical complex in Beaver County. The White House has not said when he will make that trip.
And tonight we are taking a closer look at Pennsylvania's gun laws and how they compare to our neighboring states. CBS 21's Brian Sheehan joins us now live outside the Capitol to explain. Brian.
Well, Jasmine, lawmakers don't return here to the state capitol for several more weeks, but that didn't stop many of them taking to social media this weekend to discuss reforming our nation's gun laws after those two mass shootings. Now, much of the talks have been focused on the red flag laws, which allow judges to take away individuals' guns if they believe that person is a threat to public safety. Now, earlier today, we spoke to attorney and firearms expert Mark Scaringi. He says our neighboring states, Maryland, Delaware, New York, and New Jersey all currently have them in place. Now, it was introduced here in Pennsylvania but didn't make it out of the General Assembly. Scaringi says it's also easier to process and transfer firearms here in PA than our neighboring states. And he believes the fact that PA has a state constitution that predates both the U.S. Constitution and Second Amendment is the reason why.
We have had strong protections on your right to keep and bear arms in Pennsylvania even before the United States of America came about. So that's one of the reasons that Pennsylvania is probably more conservative, might be a way to explain it, with regard to firearms rights.
Now, when it comes to red flag laws, our neighboring state, Ohio, also doesn't have one on the books. Of course, Dayton was the scene of the second mass shooting early Sunday morning. Now, Scaringi believes that red flag laws could pose an issue here in Pennsylvania. I'll explain why he believes that coming up at 6 o'clock. We're live out front of the Capitol tonight. I'm Brian Sheehan, CBS 21 News.
All right, Brian, in the wake of these mass shootings, more lawmakers say even stronger gun measures need to be put in place. Democrats are calling for bans on assault rifles and the expansion of criminal background checks. Earlier this year, the House passed legislation that would require background checks on all gun sales and most gun transfers. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell blocked that bill from coming up for a vote.
Mitch McConnell needs to get off his get the Senate back in session and start passing some of these bills that we're sending over to him.
President Trump hinted on Twitter that he may support new background checks, but he did not bring that up in his address earlier today. You can find out more stories of survival and hear how more local lawmakers are responding to these deadly mass shootings at CBS21.com.